History isn't just dates and names. It's a feeling. It's the mud on your boots, the wind in your face. And in 1721, a new feeling was blowing across the vast, cold lands of the East. This was the year the Russian Empire was born. It wasn't a quiet birth. It was loud, forged in the fires of war and the will of one man. That man was Peter. We call him Peter the Great. He stood head and shoulders above most men, a giant in body and in ambition. He looked at his sprawling country, this Muscovy, and saw something ancient, something sleeping. He wanted to wake it up. He wanted to shake it, to drag it, kicking and screaming if need be, into the modern world. Imagine building a city from nothing, from mud and swamp and mist. That was St. Petersburg. Peter called it his paradise, but for the thousands who labored and died to build it, it was anything but. Serfs and soldiers were ordered there, digging canals, laying foundations in the freezing water. It was built on their bones. He ordered his nobles, his boyars, to move there. He made them shave their long traditional beards. He made them wear Western clothes. It was a cultural revolution by decree. After Peter, the throne was a place of turmoil. Rulers came and went. But then, in 1762, a woman took power. She wasn't even Russian. She was a minor German princess named Sophie, who had come to Russia to marry the heir. But Sophie was clever, ambitious, and utterly ruthless. She learned the Russian language, she converted to the Orthodox faith, and she took a new name, Catherine. Catherine wanted to be seen as an enlightened monarch, a friend to philosophers like Voltaire and Diderot. She wrote letters, she collected art, she talked of laws and rights. An empire must grow, or it will die. That seems to be the law of history, and under Catherine, the Russian Empire grew relentlessly. To the south, she waged successful wars against the Ottoman Empire. This was an old rivalry, a clash of faiths and empires. Her armies, led by brilliant generals like Suvorov and Potemkin, won control of the northern coast of the Black Sea. The most cynical act of expansion was the carving up of Poland. Catherine, along with the rulers of Prussia and Austria, saw an opportunity. In a series of 3 partitions, they simply erased Poland from the map. To the east, the expansion was a slower, quieter process. It was a story of pioneers, fur trappers and settlers pushing across the vast emptiness of Siberia. They followed the great rivers, building small forts and trading posts. Step away from the glittering ballrooms of St. Petersburg for a moment. Walk out into the countryside. This is where the vast majority of people in the Russian Empire lived. Their world was the village, the mir. What did it mean to be a serf? Well, it meant you were property. You belonged to the land, and the land belonged to a nobleman. You could be bought and sold, sometimes with your family, sometimes without. For the nobility, life was the polar opposite. Theirs was a world of leisure, of privilege, of culture. They owned the land and the people on it. Their income came from the labor of their serfs. In the year 1812, the world changed. Napoleon Bonaparte, the master of Europe, turned his eyes to Russia. He gathered the largest European army ever seen, the Grande Armée, and marched east. The Russian army did something unexpected. They retreated. They burned their own fields and villages, leaving nothing for the French to eat. The retreat was one of the greatest disasters in military history. Their chance came in December 1825, when Tsar Alexander I died suddenly. On a cold, grey morning in St. Petersburg, a group of officers led about 3,000 soldiers into Senate Square. They refused to swear allegiance to the new Tsar, Nicholas I. The Decembrist revolt terrified Tsar Nicholas I. He saw revolution lurking around every corner. His 30-year reign was one of iron-fisted control. He created a secret police force, the Third Section, to watch over everyone. The weakness of this system was brutally exposed by the Crimean War in the 1850s. Russia went to war with the Ottoman Empire, expecting an easy victory. The war was a disaster for Russia. So, in 1861, in an act that would define his reign, Alexander II signed the Emancipation Edict. With the stroke of a pen, more than 23 million people were granted their freedom. When Alexander III died, his son, Nicholas II, became the last Tsar of Russia. He was a gentle, decent man who loved his family deeply. But he was not a strong ruler. Russia was finally beginning to industrialize. Factories, railways, and mines were being built at a rapid pace. A new industrial working class, the proletariat, was growing in the cities. The first sign of the coming earthquake was the war with Japan in 1904. In January 1905, a peaceful crowd of workers led by a priest marched to the Winter Palace to petition the Tsar. Troops opened fire on them, killing hundreds. The final hammer blow was the First World War. In 1914, Russia went to war against Germany and Austria-Hungary, but the war was a catastrophe. The army was brave, but it was badly equipped and poorly led. Millions of soldiers died. The Tsar made a fatal mistake. He went to the front to command the army himself, leaving his wife, the Empress Alexandra, in charge back in the capital. And she was under the influence of a strange and corrupt holy man, Grigory Rasputin. The end came swiftly, in February 1917. It wasn't a planned revolution. It started with women in the capital, now renamed Petrograd, queuing for bread in the freezing cold. They started to riot. Workers went on strike. On March 15, 1917, Nicholas II abdicated his throne. Nearly 200 years after Peter the Great had declared its creation, the Russian Empire was gone. It had vanished, almost overnight.